Welcome to the Alpha Girl Confidence Podcast, where we are empowering youth female athletes to play and live confidently. My name is Shay Haddo, and each week I will bring you new episodes to teach you the strategies and tools that you need in order to live a confident, empowered life both on and off the playing field. Hey, what's up? And welcome back to episode 153. Today, I had the honor of interviewing Beth and Greg Langston, who are co-founders of College Flight Plan. Greg and Beth both play Division I sports as well as both of their children, so they know a thing or two about building successful students and successful student athletes. With more than 20 years of one-on-one consulting experience, Beth and Greg have worked with hundreds of students and young professionals to help them gain confidence by empowering them to use their strengths and values to set goals and develop individual plans for their lives. In this conversation, we talk about how teens can identify and use their values to guide them in achieving their goals, how they can find their purpose in life, and we dive into some amazing advice for parents of teenagers that you aren't going to want to miss. So parents and students, this episode is going to be a game changer for you. I can't wait for you to listen. Enjoy. Hey, Greg and Beth, thank you guys so much for coming on the show today. Excited to have you guys.
Well, thanks for having us. We're glad to be here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm excited to kind of dig into what you guys do and kind of who you guys help. And also, you guys are the parents of some pretty high-level athletes, and we're high-level athletes yourselves. So excited to dig into that. So let's kind of get started with tell our listeners a little bit about you guys and a little bit about College Flight Plan and who you guys help.
Okay, so I'm Beth and this is Greg, and we actually met back in the day at Purdue University. He was a football player and I was a cheerleader. It's one of those romances, and it worked out. So gosh, there's so much to tell. We raised our kids overseas basically until they got into high school. Yeah. So, and in high school, we thought we had to get back to the States because just to prepare for college, to get into stateside sports and things like that, the life overseas is a little bit different. The opportunities are great. I mean, we had a great time. They learned foreign language. By the time our son was 13 years old, he had been to 5 countries, 12 different schools.
Wow.
And, so we did a lot of moving around. It was great for them. I mean, I grew up in Indiana, so it was great for me too. Greg grew up overseas. He was doing this. So anyway, I'm an educator. I have an education degree. He has I was going to say a law degree, not a law degree.
Last time I checked, it was a business degree.
A business degree from Purdue. And so our goal is to help students figure out what their strengths and weaknesses are, what they're passionate about, and what they're naturally gifted to do, so that they can choose a major or profession that fits them well. And they can go to college if they want to and get out in 4 years instead of 6 years, as most kids are taking these days. So Greg's combined our fortes and became superpowers.
But in a nutshell, the kids can think, I'm going to be an athlete, but at the end of the day, they're just one injury away from having to fall back on a career. And so that's why it's really important for them to understand their self-discovery, what their strengths are, what they're passionate about, what they value, so they can establish goals that hopefully, and for a select few, I think the percentage is 1% of high school kids go on to play at Division I level in college, and only 1% of those get to play in the pros. Mm-hmm. So if you're fortunate to be in that rarefied air, that's fantastic. But if you're not, you've got to fall back on a career of some sort.
So how did you guys get into this? Was it something that you, with your kids, kind of struggled with, or your own experience?
Yes, definitely. When we thought we needed to get back to the States so that we could find outlets and opportunities for them to have the self-discovery process, because we knew that when you get ready to fill out those college applications and things like that, you have to know who you are, where you're going, what you're going to do, what your plans are, what your goals are. But there really weren't any opportunities. But Greg, as an executive, was privileged to getting all this wonderful executive coaching, teaching him how to be a great leader, a great team player, assessing the skills that he had. And he's like, why did I have to wait 20 years to get this?
Right.
And why aren't we teaching this to our kids? So we developed the tools and tried them out on our kids, who are our guinea pigs.
That's right.
And it worked.
And I took it from my business side, and Beth, being the educator, said, listen, you can't talk for 30 minutes. You can't talk for an hour. The people have the attention span of a goldfish. And so therefore you need to make a video, meaning no disrespect, but in today's day and age, you got to convey something very quickly. So all the videos are 2.5 minutes long on average. And so it really provides a student with clear imagery and clear understanding as to what they have to do. And that's the way we can take a really big subject and break it down into little chunks.
Yeah. And speaking of your kids being guinea pigs, like tell us a little bit about kind of their athletic background, just to kind of prove, I guess, what you guys are doing and how well it's worked.
Yes. Well, so our daughter, Brooke, she was just one of those people, everything she tried, she did well. And we were like, where did she come from? But she was a very, very shy person growing up. And we lived in Cuernavaca, Mexico, but they had a great gymnastics program there. It was Bella Caroli's partner was in Cuernavaca, Mexico. And I just remember, just trying to understand your kids as they're going out to do this. And I knew how shy she was, but it was her first competition and she got out there and I'm like, feeling like, oh gosh, poor thing. She gets out there, puts her arm up, takes her pose, and wins just about every event that she was in. And we're like, oh my gosh, she's driven by, competition. And her brother, who's 2 years older and 2 inches shorter, was always trying to keep up with her. He was a very great rower and tennis player. So, but anyway, just figuring out the mentality of our children was part of it too. And, our goal as parents, we're like, every kid has their strength. And it's up to us to find it and to cultivate that and nurture it and, help them realize what their strength is and their purpose and things like that. I probably got off the subject.
But we didn't do it perfectly. I mean, I was listening to one of your podcasts where you were talking about the 3 things parents shouldn't do. And, one of the things was stop telling them to be realistic. Why don't you tell this is Brooke, who's done very well, but tell her about the story when she was horseback riding.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So again, after we moved back to the States, I said no horseback riding because they had done that overseas a little bit. And I thought we need to do swimming and, know, baseball or whatever stateside sports. She did ask if she could have a lesson. So she had a lesson, did really well. We went down that path and she's like in 8th grade, one of her first competitions. And I'm getting her ready. She gets into what we call pre-game mode. And you don't talk to Brooke during pre-game mode. But it was her first time to go in on her horse. And I said, remember, this is very political. It was very political where we lived in Memphis, Tennessee at the time. Okay. And I said, remember, it's political. I want you to go in and have fun. Just enjoy it and, love that horse and have fun with your horse. She put her gloves on. I gave her a riding crop. She walked into the ring, walked her horse in, and proceeded to win the whole event. And she walks out with her blue ribbon and she hands it to me and she goes, Mom, would you please never say that again?
Oh my God.
In other words, never give limiting beliefs to your kids.
I can do
this. I love
Tell them that they can do whatever they want.
Wow. And it sounds like, she sounds very like self-driven and self-motivated, right? And so she like a lot of girls are kind of the opposite, where they may need to hear like, just go have fun, like zero pressure. But she sounds like someone that's like, don't tell me what I can't do because I'll like go show you, essentially.
Yes. And she's harder on herself than any coach could ever be.
For sure. Yeah. So I kind of want to get into, you guys talked about the 5 questions that you guys use to help your students basically, have some sense of self-discovery and really figure out their passion in life and their purpose and all of those really, really important things. So the first thing you guys talk about is values. So what are your values, and really like, how do you use your values? So for you guys, why is this the first piece? Is it the first piece because you guys see it as kind of the foundation, or is it the most important? Talk to me a little bit about the value part of this 5 questions.
I believe that values and character counts, and it really matters. And you really can't have your purpose and your goals and so on and so forth if they're not aligned with your values. And so, if I can describe for your audience, if you think of a tree, a large tree, and a cutaway of that tree, and you have a root system that goes deep down into the ground, that root system are your values. And so that supports your purpose, which is the trunk, which supports your branches, which are your goals and your objectives and the national championship and so on and so forth.
Right.
But if you think about life, you're going to be tested both professionally and in sports by challenges that are going to come your way. And it's almost like if you see the wind blowing against that tree, if you have a strong root system and you're living according to your values and your root system, then you won't get pushed over. If you don't have a strong root system and you're evaluating yourself basically only on your social media feed, then you don't have a strong root system and you will be pushed over. And so what we do is we teach the kids to determine what their values are, not what the parents are, but what their values are, what they value is important. Then we teach them how to make decisions based upon those values so that when they go forward in life and they're saying, if integrity is my value, if love is my value, if excellence is my value, and I make a decision that violates one of those values, do I still continue to go forward or not? And that's particularly important for the student when they're not with their parents or with their coach, but they are able to live by their values. Once they have that, they then can determine what their purpose is and what their goals and so forth is.
I love that. I love to use tree analogies with a lot of different things, but this one makes a lot of sense, right? It's like without those strong values, it's like you're going to waver in difficult times. And also I think of values as, and you kind of mentioned this, but kind of like a compass, like kind of pointing you in the direction you want to go. And if it isn't aligned with your values, then you know it's probably not the right decision for you. And I love that you guys start with this because I think values are so underrated. Like how many kids do you guys talk to that actually have values before you start working with them?
Well, they have the values of their parents, but they don't know them.
Their own values, right?
But they don't have their own values. And I would say as part of this process, and I'll jump forward at the very end, the students report out to their parents and their accountability partner what their values are. And many times the parents say, well, I don't even have values. What are my values? And you're telling me what those are. So you start with the values and then you build off of that. And like you say, they can visualize the tree foundation and building off of that because it's a sequential layering of information. Just like I didn't learn all these tools, in one fell swoop. It took a long time to do that. Then what we did is we worked together to try to layer the effect. And so we give snippets in a certain sequence so that the student builds a sense of confidence as they go through the process.
I love that. And how would you, in like kind of a nutshell, how does someone go about like finding their own values? Because I know it's so hard. Like we think of the same words or we hear what our parents' values are. So how do you guys help the students to really make them individualize for their life?
What we do is they go in the program, they have a card sort, an electronic card sort process where they're faced with 60 different values. And if they're not sure which value is important for them, they can see there's information on each one of the cards and they can go and they can determine these are my must-have values. These are like-to-have values. And so what they do is they go through a card sort to get down from 60 to 7, then they get down to the top 3. Then what they do is they go through a process of determining what is the importance of each one of those values to them specifically. So it's their unique value. Don't care about the parents, you care about the student. Then what or who is negatively or positively impacting you relative to that value. And so then what should you continue doing to support that value, start doing that you weren't doing relative to that value, and stop doing relative to that value. And so what that does is that allows them to go through a gating process so they're very clear on what those values are for them.
Wow, this is awesome. Go ahead, Beth.
If they have a value that doesn't happen to be in our list of values, they can add that one.
Okay.
So they're not limited to what we present.
Yeah. So it's really then, I guess there's a bunch of values, but it seems like the really kind of core 3, like top 3 is what you like them to focus on. And I love how it's like so much layers to it. Like there's the people surrounding, especially with teenagers, their peers and the people around them make such a huge difference in their life. So I love how you kind of tie in, like, how are the people in my life affecting my values? Because that's absolutely huge. So I think that's really, really cool that you guys do that. And then from there goes kind of to, how do we identify our strengths and our weaknesses, correct?
Correct.
So
Absolutely. And what we did,
yeah, go ahead.
what we did there is taking a tool out of the C-suite. Is once you get to a certain level and you have people reporting to you and so on and so forth, and I went from having 0 to having 9,000. And how do you inspire those different people? You need to get feedback from a bunch of different folks. So we created a tool, confidential survey, where the student picks up to 8 trusted advisors that can be their coach or coaches, a teacher, their parents, best friend, if they're working, advisors, if they're working, a boss. And what they do is they reach out to them through our process, and it asks them a 7-minute survey. What are my strengths? What do I suck at? In other words, what should I avoid? How do I add value to others, both my teammates and my family and so forth? What should I study? What are the 3 things I should study, or should I go to college or not?
Yeah.
And all that information comes back in 200 data points from people that are really trusted by this individual. Plus, they also select an accountability partner who will help them through the course, which is a 12-hour course.
Okay. I'm probably going to say this numerous times throughout this interview, but I really wish I would have had this when I was going through high school. I'm like,
you're not alone. You're not alone.
It's already blowing my mind. So that's incredible. And then the big thing for me was kind of like the next question: what is my purpose in life? And I feel like that's such a heavy, like, number one, how do you define purpose?
Well, can I just tell that one stat?
No,
you know that
you can't.
87% of people 16 to 29 feel that they have no purpose.
Or meaning.
87%.
That's insane. That's why it's such this deep thing. So how do you define that? Because I feel like purpose is like, sometimes we think of it all these different kind of ways.
Well, before I get to that, can I impress you with the importance of learning how you make decisions, because this will help you with your purpose.
Please.
And that is, they take a Kolbe assessment, which is your cognitive assessment. It's not your intellectual capabilities. It's not your relational capabilities. It's what you instinctively do.
Oh, yeah.
And so they get back a report that tells them what they instinctively do when they problem solve. Okay. From that, they then go to developing a paragraph, and I'm going to get to answer your purpose statement question, but they develop what we call their distinctive natural ability statement, their DNA statement, where you mentioned it earlier, young ladies and young men are not really confident in their skills and what their abilities are. With that information, plus the feedback they got from other folks, plus their values and their strengths and weaknesses, they then create a paragraph that says, this is my wheelhouse. This is my distinct natural ability. I do not suck doing this. I do this really, really well, so that when they're asked to volunteer for an activity for their team, at school, at work, they know that they have a high likelihood of success. Yeah. And so armed with that, again, remember the layering? Now you get to the purpose statement, which is, what is my purpose? What is it that I'm going to do that is greater than myself? And what we do is we find the student where they are, and we start by identifying what are 3 things that you've accomplished already in life. You're not dictating down to them, but you basically come alongside them and you allow them to determine what they are proud of. What are some stories, some instances, some individuals that inspired them in the past? And what was the impact that situation had on them? What impact did they have on themselves and other people? And how do they leverage that into a purpose statement? And then we show them how to create a purpose statement for themselves.
And then what do they do with that purpose statement?
Well, that purpose statement should be the guiding light for them to say, I want to cure cancer,
right?
Or I want to be the best soccer player on the planet, and I want to out-dribble Ronaldo and Messi. Whatever the case may be, it's something that is future-oriented versus meaning is more past-oriented. Your purpose is future-oriented. But to get to your future, you have to understand what means a lot to you. And so that's part of the introspection that the student goes through. And in addition to the statistic that Beth mentioned, another thing that I thought was pretty cool, Mark Twain said their two most important days of your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why.
Yeah.
And you may have heard that one before.
I have.
You can use your purpose statement to then say, okay, if this is my purpose statement, then what are the aspirational goals that you have for life? And what we get 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds to determine are in 4 success elements: health, wealth, wisdom, and relationships. What will I have accomplished by the time I'm 65? And so once they've identified those specifically, they then determine if that's what I want to do. And, I know many of the parents that are listening right now are saying, there's no way my 15-year-old can figure out how much money they want to make,
right?
What their wealth is, and so on and so forth. You know what? They really can, because the students actually present that to their parents at the very end.
Oh, wow.
But what's very, very striking is, in addition to those aspirational goals, it's a really interesting scenario where you go to the student and say, okay, if this is what you really want your life to be like, what are some things that you're doing that are not supporting that? And two things come out. One is social media, and the other one is too little sleep, which typically go hand in hand.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. I love this. Yeah. Every time I ask my girls, like, what's distracting you? Why aren't you getting enough sleep? Why don't you have time for homework? It's always social media is the culprit. So that's very interesting. Here's a question for you. How often do you see your students' purposes changing throughout working with you? Because I know, do you guys see that a lot? Like, do you feel like a purpose is something that does change a lot? What's your take on that?
I definitely think it does change a lot as we go, but at least what we're trying to get to is that they think about their purpose and they create one for now. And so then it can change. We tell them nothing's set in stone here. These are going to change. Your aspirational goals will change greatly. And that's why we break it down to 5-year and 1-year goals, so they can have action items to address that will help them get to those goals. But yes, everything's going to change.
And what we do is we encourage them to meet with their parents every December and review their aspirational goals for the next 5 years. And what I say is, for the next 5 years, your parents will pay for dinner, but after that, you pay for dinner. And what happens is, you put a stake in the ground, and you may, just like a flight is correcting according to weather and radar and so on and so forth, but at least they have a general direction that they're going in. They're not going through mindlessly. And as Beth mentioned, they have their 5-year and 1-year goals. And then armed with that, they're in a much better position to determine what is a core major that they should pick. And we don't tell them one major. You teach lots of students, and if you say just pick one major, they freak out. Well, what if this is the wrong one? And so you say, listen, pick your major, pick your minor, and another one. And the reason that's important is because 40% of college graduates, only 40% graduate in 4 years. Fully 60% graduate in 6 years, and that's because they're changing majors so many times. And that costs a lot of money.
Yes. Okay. So that goes along with the purpose thing, right? Is that nothing is set in stone. As you evolve and grow, your purpose is probably going to evolve and grow. So I like how you said, at least how I understood it, is it's about developing the skills and learning how to find your purpose, but that doesn't mean that you have to continue on that path if stuff changes. So it's like, you can always evolve and grow, just like your major can evolve, your purpose can evolve. So I like how you guys kind of go about it,
because you don't know what your experiences are going to be, and you're going to mature also over time. And that so many incidences in your life can change your purpose and your outlook,
And, we found that as a student goes through this process and they at the end report out to their parents and their accountability partner, it really gives them a transformation, a sense of clarity. This is what I want to do, a sense of confidence that this is what I want to do, both verbally through an elevator speech that they develop and through their application essays, and a sense of control that these are my goals. This is what I want to do with my life. It also changes the tables. It's interesting to watch the dynamic that happens with the family. Because let's assume you have an overbearing mother or father that says, we've all been doctors, you got to be a doctor.
Yep.
And John or Susie doesn't really want to be a doctor. And the development and the information and the self-discovery shows, you know what? I wouldn't be a very good doctor, but I would be an absolutely fantastic biological engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that, and I'd be passionate about that, and I can live outside of the home and make a great living at that. Mom and dad are going to be much more willing to go along with that,
Yeah.
having this tool, than saying, you want to be a biological engineer?
Crazy.
I mean, you're crazy. You can't do that. Your DNA is not set up for that.
Right. Yeah. And what I see too with this process is it probably creates a lot of personal responsibility as well. Do you guys see that?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's so great to see. And, sometimes at the beginning of the process, the kids are a bit reluctant. It's
Yes.
like, oh my gosh, another thing I have to do. But we find that as they get going in it and just discover these things and hear what other people think are their strengths and weaknesses too, and just learning all about themselves, and they gain, like Greg said, that confidence. We see it, and then the parents see it. It's so great to be in the room when they present their final summary statement
Yeah.
to the parents and the accountability partner, because the parents are usually just floored. They're like, oh my gosh, I've known you for 15, 16, 17 years. I had no idea about that. We've done some young
Yeah.
adults too, whose parents are like, oh my gosh.
We have accountability partners that weep and so on and so forth, because this is so amazing. This is fantastic. So
Yeah.
it really, it helps the student have a sense of confidence, but it also translates into dollars and cents,
Yeah.
because they can graduate in 4 years instead of 6.
Mm-hmm.
And depending upon what school you're at, it can either be between $30,000 and $80,000 that you save, which is a significant amount of money.
Yeah. And something that I keep hearing you guys say is accountability, right? Accountability partners. Why is that such an important part of your guys' process?
Well, if you write something down, the likelihood of success is greater. We all hear about writing your goals down. If you share it publicly, the probability of success is 65%. If you have an accountability partner, it becomes 95%.
Oh, wow.
And so that's why we encourage students. And I remember in college, I didn't want to go work out, but my roommate said, come on, let's go work out. And there were some days that he wasn't motivated and I was motivated, and we held each other accountable to go forward and develop. And that's the way that you achieve those goals.
And I think too, like just all of this probably for the parents is a huge shift in that they hopefully feel like they can take a step back a little bit and like, wow, like my kid is like doing so much. They're taking so much responsibility. They have all of this accountability. So like, do you guys see the parents a lot of times kind of stepping back and not being so much of what do you call it? Helicopter parents?
Yes, we do see that result. Not 100% of the time.
Right.
Because it takes a long time to break patterns.
Totally. Right.
But, and some parents are not involved at all. It's like, okay, just do it all and let me know the results. They're always pleased with the results, but it's like, this is your life, kid, you take care of it. And so we get all kinds.
But as the three of us know, the students are watching every little move that the parents and every little facial expression that the parents are making. And if when a student is presenting, these are their goals and their aspirations to their parents, and they're giving positive smiles, that does wonders for their self-confidence.
It's huge. Yeah. I talk about all the time, like parents, it's not always about what you say, but it's about what you do. They don't always listen to you, but they're always watching you, whether you see it or not. So I love that you hit that home as well. And speaking of parents, I want to talk a little bit about your guys's, being parents of high level athletes, kind of what were some of your good moments? What were some of your bad moments? So for you guys, what do you see as for you, what was the hardest part of being a parent just in general? And I guess for those high level athletes as they were kind of going through their high school years?
Yeah. Wow. Well, we took our job seriously, and we still do, as being parents. And now we have the privilege of being grandparents. So that's even better.
Yay.
But so I think the greatest struggle was just being consistent and, meaning what you say and sticking to it. Because even with littles, especially with littles, They want to know that you are actually the boss. And then as they grow older, giving them that freedom to fail and do what they need to do, so they can experience that and you can work through it together. I think that's the hard part, letting your kids fail. Don't let them fight their own battles too. I think that was a hard part. You just want to get in there and you can mess with me, but don't mess with my kid, you know?
Right.
And don't talk to them beforehand if they don't want to talk about the game and the preparation. And don't talk to them about afterwards. If they bring it up, that's totally cool. But it's their sport as much as you may be enjoying it. And the fact that your son or daughter is a stud, and the volleyball coach for Brooke said she's a stud. It's okay to let them live their life and to enjoy the ride along with them, but it's their life, not yours. And you need to really control your emotions and have unconditional love and support them both in the good times as well as in the bad times.
And to let them know that they don't have to play this sport another day. That's not why we live.
Yes.
They are more important to us than the sport. But that's hard for the athlete to put down. I mean, we told that Brooke several times, and sending them off to college, it's not always what you expect at college either.
Right.
You think they're going to take good care of your kid, and it's not always the situation. But the good thing about college athletes, they are very marketable when they get out of college. Everybody wants to hire a former college athlete because they're dedicated and they work hard and they're committed and they're team players and all those great things. You learn lots of wonderful lessons.
Okay, I just want to reiterate a few things that you guys said that were so powerful, because this is stuff that I'm not a parent. So coming from me, people may take it differently, but coming from two, I'll call you guys very successful parents and very successful professionals, the big thing was like freedom to fail, right? Like that is so huge. That's what I'm like, I don't have kids, so I know it's easier said than done, but you have to let your kids fail. And here's actually, this is just for my own selfish reasons, and I'm curious to hear your guys' perspective, is do you guys feel like the parents of this generation, so current parents now of teenage athletes, do you feel like they are more protective over, say, your parents and that generation over kind of the whole letting your kids fail, letting your kids mess up? What's your take on that?
Definitely. And I think one of those things is there's so many comparisons with the social media. I don't think it was less back in the day, and kids are still comparing themselves to other people. There are always going to be people that are better than you are at your sport, and there'll always be people that aren't. And so, know where you fit in, do the work that it takes, but it's not the be all end all. But the parents, even in our day though, I remember now I tell parents, just remember there is life after volleyball. Brooke played volleyball at Michigan State. So it was like, we were crazy parents and fun. We had many fun years doing it, but there is life after all that. Sports aren't the be all and end all, but they sure are a big part of it.
But in today's day and age, with social media being so curated and you have these influencers, they're measuring themselves against perfection. Yeah. And that, particularly with the social media, what's happening is they almost disconnect their brain and they're just kind of going through and they're not making decisions. They're just taking in whatever they see. And what we do is try to teach them that, perfection is a mental construct. It's kind of like when you're in an airplane and you're flying, when you're going to fly down to San Diego here in not too long, and you look out the window, you see the horizon, you're flying towards the horizon. As it gets closer, you think, okay, that's perfection, and it's going to continue to move further away. You'll never get up to the horizon. So what you need to do is you need to measure yourself from yesterday's concrete progress. And so let's say that you were able to dribble that ball in this fashion yesterday. How did you do today? You were able to shoot the ball yesterday this way. How did you shoot it today? You were able to hit the ball yesterday in this fashion. You just measure what did you do today versus yesterday. And that's a much healthier perspective.
I love that. And social media, I am so incredibly grateful that I didn't have it when I was like growing up in those early years. And especially as parents, it's probably so hard for them to navigate, screen time and social media and all that kind of stuff. And then another thing that you guys said that is really, really important is unconditional love, no matter what. And the reason why this has come more to the forefront of my mind recently, just because of girls that I've been working with, to the point where I think that their parents do love them unconditionally, but they don't show it. There's so many times where the girls I talk to, they feel like their relationship with their parent, they feel like the love that they get from their parent is completely based off of how they play. And I know that that's not what parents intend, but it's happening. And so I'm so glad that you guys said unconditional love, actually show that it doesn't matter what you do. I love you exactly the same if you're the best player in the world or if you literally are the worst player in the world. So thank you for saying that. And I just wanted to make sure that we kind of hit that point again, because that's so important.
They need to know no matter what they do, we couldn't love them anymore. No matter what they do, we couldn't love them any less. It's going to be constant. Our love is constant.
And we both grew up in hyper conditional love families.
Yeah.
And so that's why we were very focused on making sure that we did the absolute opposite, because if I scored a touchdown, if I got straight A's, it was all good.
Yep.
If I didn't, I was whale slime. And so both verbally and not so verbally, you could sense that as a student. And so we committed to never letting that happen with our kids.
And to us, their character was much more important, how they acted on the court or the field or wherever they were,
Or when they're not with the ball, what are they doing when they're not with the ball?
Yes,
and
right.
how are they acting when nobody's watching?
And their integrity. Yeah. I love that. Wow. So I want to ask you guys both, before I want to kind of get into more about what you guys do and where people can find you. But before that, I would love to hear if you were to give one piece of advice to a student, if one of you wants to tackle the student, and then one of you a piece of advice for parents that are kind of handling, the college process, just youth sports in general. What would that piece of advice be?
Wow. For parents and students, I would say, remember, when you're getting ready to go to college, you are a student athlete. You are always a student. You can never just be an athlete at college. You can just be a student, but you are a student athlete, and that is why you're going. And so keep that in the forefront of your mind. Our sports get huge. I know, we've been there. And the thing is, whatever they study in college anyway, what percent of people are using the degrees that they have?
29% of the people that are working today in their degree that they graduated from.
Only 29%.
Correct.
And not those with advanced degrees.
Not those with advanced, but undergrad. That's correct. And then to add to that, is that 70 to 75% of the people that are working today don't like their jobs.
Wow.
So that's why
it's bringing the stats today. I love it.
I love the stats.
That's why it's important for students, whether it's with us or whomever, to do the self-discovery to figure out what is it that jazzes you.
Yeah, and start early. That's what I always say too. We start too late for this preparation for what we're going to do the rest of our lives, whether it's college or another vocation that you might want to go into. But start early to discover that. And I know sports take up a lot of time, but if they can do any kind of internship or on the job, examples and opportunities. Our son thought his whole life he wanted to be a doctor. Life. And so in high school, during one summer, he interned with a neurosurgeon and a cardiovascular surgeon because he thought he wanted to go into surgery, be a surgeon. And at the end of the summer, he's like, that is not at all what I want to do. So good thing he didn't waste all those years pursuing that when he found out at a very reasonable time.
Yes.
No, I don't want to do that. And he went into the financial world. So he's very successful doing what he does because he loves it.
So it's either do it and learn that you don't like it, or do it to gain the experience. And then when you get out of college, you have a little bit of experience. And I think internships and just getting a little bit of, job experience is really important in high school. Helps on the applications as well, I'm sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. And just, trying it, and it's okay. Empower yourself to fail, because what you're doing is you're measuring against your own results, not your consideration about what your playmates think you're going to do. Because in many cases, they don't have the guts to try it out on their own.
Yeah.
But if you do it, that's very empowering. And you, again, look at, what did I do yesterday? Am I improving today versus yesterday? And that's the way they should measure themselves.
I mean, really, if anyone does that every single day, there's no way that you can't get better every day.
Right.
Well, one of my mottos is often pleased, never satisfied. So I'm a really driven guy.
Yeah.
I was on an airplane and I had that on a jacket, and this lady behind me says, "What is that saying?" And I said, "It's often pleased, but I'm never satisfied." And, kind of like the growth mindset.
Right.
And she goes, "Well, what's that for?" I said, "That's for my company." And she says, "Well, who thought of that?" And I go, "Well," I said, "I did." She said, "I don't want to work for you." I said, "There's nothing wrong with being pleased by what you've done, but you can always do better."
Yeah.
And so that's just kind of the mindset that I have, and we've tried to pass on to our kids and other students.
I love that. So tell us a little bit about, obviously we've went through all the 5 questions, kind of what you guys do, how amazing it all sounds. But I want to hear kind of what are the services that you guys offer that can really help these families, these kids, these parents, and then where can they learn more about those?
Okay. Basically what we offer is several different options of a self-discovery process where the student can go through either a 6-hour program, a 12-hour program, which
not
is
at one sitting.
Not at one sitting,
Yeah.
in 2.5-minute increments.
Right.
What we described, or in some cases, families say, "Listen, I have the time and I have the money, and I want you to mentor my kid through this whole process," and that can take up to 12 weeks.
Yeah.
And so it's a 3-phase process that takes them through that, and you can find that at collegeflightplan.com. collegeflightplan.com, or you can send an email to Beth. Beth deals with all the young ladies. I deal with the young men.
Oh, very cool.
And so it's Beth at collegeflightplan.com or Greg at collegeflightplan.com. And for your audience that may be having some questions as to how do I help my teen with this self-discovery and what do I focus on and what are some things to do to start early, we have a really good document that has a bunch of statistics. You said we have statistics. It has a bunch of statistics that will help a parent make a decision and understand this is really important and I can't leave it up to the school. I've got to take ownership with my son or daughter to get this done. Some 5 early actions that they take. They can find all this information at collegeflightplan.com/guide, GUIDE.
We will make sure we put that guide and the website in the show notes so listeners can go click on that. And then what age do you guys usually start working with these kids in your mentorship programs and in your courses?
Yes, we usually like sophomore, junior year. We do have some seniors, but senior year gets very busy.
And some freshmen.
Yes.
And some freshmen. It just depends a little bit on the maturity of the student,
Right.
where they are in life, what they're thinking. And I also help with application essays. That's what I do. I'm an application essay editor. I'm a nerd at heart, but I love it. So email me. I'm here.
But one last thing that I'll share with parents and any students that are listening, regardless of the self-discovery that you do, one of the benefits is that you're going to find out what's really important to you, and you're going to be able to deselect what are some of those things that I'm currently doing that I shouldn't be doing because it's not going to help me going forward. Let's say you're a 3-sport athlete and you realize that you have a chance to be, absolutely phenomenal with one sport, but the other 2, you may want to rethink about playing those other 2 sports. I know that you have a great time with your teammates and the coaches and so on, but you may want to rededicate that time because you don't have more time into some other activities that are going to help you either pick the right major or pick a career.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of times it's not about adding more things, but it's about taking away things so that you can really focus in on, your strengths and your purpose. So I think that kind of wraps it all up very beautifully. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. We'll make sure that we put all of the links where they can get all the amazing stats that you guys presented today. But thank you guys so much again for coming on.
Well, thanks for having us. We appreciate you.
Absolutely, Shay. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.